there was no flight data recorder or cockpit voice recorder required on board the occurrence aircraft. So, to recreate the flight path, we used information from air traffic control audio recordings, as well as radar data from facilities in Kelowna and Kamloops. That's how we know the aircraft began its takeoff roll at approximately 9:32 p.m. Afterward, the radar data, which offer much less detail than flight data recorders, showed that the aircraft experienced rapid changes in the initial rate of climb, from 4,000 feet per minute down to just 600 feet per minute, then increasing to 6,000 feet per minute, all within about 30 seconds. During this time, the aircraft also deviated to the right of its intended track by as much as 20 degrees. On its own, this information is not enough to establish anything definitive. Perhaps the autopilot was not engaged. If so, that might mean that the pilot was experiencing a heavier than usual workload. This might also account for a delay in the pilot making initial contact with the air traffic controller. But the investigation also revealed that the pilot, although experienced, had very little recent experience flying at night, with just 2 night takeoffs in the past 6 months. This did not meet Transport Canada requirements to carry passengers at night. Pilots who do not have sufficient night proficiency are at a greater risk of experiencing what's known as spatial disorientation, physical illusions like the feeling of tumbling backward, which may occur during periods of prolonged acceleration, such as during an initial climb after takeoff. And even though they are erroneous, these sensations can be intense, causing pilots to doubt their instruments, to incorrectly adjust controls, or even put the aircraft into an accidental spiral dive. But again, without hard data, without verifiable data, we cannot know for certain what happened that night. All TSB investigators can do is develop a likely scenario, one where a pilot without enough recent night flights and with limited recent experience in flying by instruments, and who was likely dealing with a high workload associated with flying the aircraft alone, experienced spatial disorientation and departed from controlled flight shortly after takeoff. This lack of concrete proof has been extremely frustrating for investigators at the TSB, especially after 18 months.
It's time. We're calling for the mandatory installation. We've seen other accidents since the Black Sheep accident, 2011. We've seen the benefits in the accident in Les Îles-la-Madeleine that a flight recorder can have in terms of helping the TSB determine what happened and why. And if we don't know what happened and why, then those who need to make changes to prevent similar accidents in the future don't know what actions to take.
Well, it's very frustrating. We keep the families involved throughout the investigation, but it's extremely frustrating when at the end of 18 months we've come up with a likely scenario of spatial disorientation, but it is just that, a likely scenario, but certainly not, with recorders we would have had a much better idea of what went on.